Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
Hi, I'm Jessica Faust.
And we are literary agents who have taken our popular blog to YouTube to discuss all things publishing. Today we are doing a little myth busting and we're debunking all of the lies authors tell themselves about the process of getting published.
I love this, and I think that a lot of new authors, new to publishing, new to our YouTube, will really like this. But truthfully, I see a lot of authors who have publishing contracts and who are more experienced and who've been around, some of them for a number of years, who will still tell themselves these things in a way that doesn't help them at all.
Well, I think what every single one of these boils down to is a lack of confidence in your own journey.
Yeah.
And I think that can happen at any stage. So we all need the reminders.
Yep. Even agents. We even need to be reminded of this.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, I mean, especially when we're talking about our clients, right? Like, why isn't this one working the way I thought this one would do it, and things like that.
Yeah.
So we've organized this really from the beginning of your process and working our way forward. And the first part of that is that you'll be with your critique group forever.
Yeah, this is a hard one to hear. This might be one of the hardest for everybody to hear, do you think?
Yeah, well, it's hard for me to hear too, because I mean, I started my publishing, writing journey with 3 other writers, and then we've grown that group, and I have no intentions on going anywhere, but
that's not what they think after watching this video.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I'm like, the possibility of it happening, like me deciding I need to leave the group, anybody deciding they need to leave the group is inevitable, really.
Yeah.
And we've had people leave and come back. And it's a hard thing to grasp, right? Especially when you start the journey with somebody and they are kind of like the constant in it, that you might think, why wouldn't we ever work together forever? I mean,
right. I think maybe we should reframe how we think of critique groups.
Yes.
And I think critique groups become friendships and
they do
support groups, which is great. But in a job, or even in a support group, if you're in a therapy support group, sometimes it just doesn't work for you anymore. It doesn't mean you don't still have friends there. But it's doesn't.
It's hard to divorce the two, though.
Yeah. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. But I think there has to be, if you're looking at your publishing journey as a career, the critique group is part of that.
Yeah.
And the problem I often see or hear, so this was a big one, when I would talk to authors, when I would be at conferences or something, and I would give critiques, and I would say to the author, I think finding a critique group would be really useful for you. And the author's response, I would hear this so often, they would get really defensive and say, I am part of a critique group, and they're a great group of people. That's lovely. But maybe a great group of people isn't going to get you published. And those are 2 different things.
Yes. So when we started our critique group and it got bigger, we kept in mind and we discussed the fact that, eventually, this is also a business tool. And regarding it as such and knowing that we'll still be friends and support each other outside of that is important. And I think going into a critique group and having those clear lines of, I will do this for you, but that's not part of my role as your critique partner, so that you can also not do those things. I think that's really important to set those healthy expectations of what this group would be.
One thing I know and have learned over many years is that the most successful authors are in critique groups with authors at their level. So the most successful authors are in critique groups with the most successful authors. And it goes back to the adage that I strongly believe in, which is the 5 people you surround yourself are the people that really sort of make you who you are. So if you're in a critique group where you are doing all the heavy lifting and you are giving the most critique, but what you're getting is not taking you to that next level and you are ready to go to that next level, then maybe you're not surrounding yourself with the right people. They might be great. They might be your best friends, but maybe they're not your best business support.
Agreed.
So, and it's not always bad either. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing to choose to switch critique groups. It just might be what you need. And, it doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean that they're bad critiquers. It's just they're not taking you to where you need to be.
Our second reason is that somebody else's writing process is so much better or easier than yours.
The process.
The dreaded process.
Um, what I've said to my authors for years, probably the most consistent advice I've ever given that really has never changed, is that nobody likes their writing process and everybody thinks somebody else's is better. And none of that is, well, you might not like your writing process, but somebody else's is not necessarily better for you.
It's one of the things that drives me crazy about our industry, because there's always like best writing tips, right? And I think it's all a load of crap. I don't know. I mean, like, I've read the list and I'm like, yeah, that's just not gonna work for me. Like, I'm never gonna do that, right? Like, I mean, I think I've talked about this on the channel. I had a writing professor who will not be named, who swears that you should never use the word said. Like, and all of those little things I think go into a process too. But like the tips from other people, they need to be regarded as such, like other people's tips and
Yes.
other people's processes. And I think we can't really absorb the way other people do things and try to make it our own, because it never jives right. It's like square peg round hole.
I mean, we can try it.
Yeah.
You can absolutely try it, and you should, because I think the way you hone and understand your process is by, trying things and seeing what works and what doesn't. But another big one that we hear all the time is button chair and write every day, which doesn't work for everybody, because some people do their best writing in their head while they're walking the dog. That's when I write all my blog posts, to be honest.
If I wrote every day, I would stop writing.
Yeah.
Because I say this all the time. I don't love writing. I like having written. I don't love writing. It's stressful, and that's fine. Like, it is a stressful process, but the way I deal with that is writing when I want to. And I think people just have to trust their own process.
Yep. I agree. Absolutely.
Yep. So number 3 is that it's one smooth road once you get an agent.
Yeah, I guess my feeling is here, there's such a focus on getting an agent because of the query process that there's this feeling of relief and doneness and instant success when that happens, because understandably and fairly, so many don't really take into account next steps because it's too overwhelming. So you've achieved what you've been fighting to achieve, and now it's just going to be easy.
I don't have much to add to this one, because I wish it were the case, but I mean, it's still a competitive industry, and I think that's the best thing to keep in mind. It's still a competitive industry.
And we don't have a crystal ball. No. We offer on books because we love them, because of our knowledge of the market, because of our connections with editors, and because we think that not only can we sell it, but we really feel passionate that readers are going to love this as much as we do. But show me an agent who's sold everything they've ever taken on, and I'll show you an agent that plays it way too safe and is probably lying.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So our 4th reason is that it was easy for insert author here.
Joe Blow, Sally Ride. I don't think she ever wrote a book. Any name. I mean, I think we all choose. I mean, we do it as agents, right? We look at another agent's sales and we think, they have it so easy. How come they're doing that? Why can't I do that? And it doesn't make sense sometimes, even the other people we choose to compare ourselves to.
Yeah.
But somehow in that need to compare, we always decide that it was super easy for that person and it's so much harder for me.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I think this has to do with, we talk about this all the time, I think, on the channel and off the channel, but it has to do with like the tip of the iceberg, what you see on social media versus what's actually happening behind the scenes. And, the time and the struggles and the work and the dedication and all of the things that go into getting published, what's happening behind the scenes, it's not showcased.
Right. And the path to publishing, the publishing journey is different for everybody. And maybe it was super easy for that person to get a book deal, but maybe it was easier for you to get the second book deal than it was for them to get their second book deal. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is what might have been easy for one person doesn't mean the entire journey is easy.
Yeah, and I just had a thought that flew out of my brain, but it was a good one, I assure you. And if it comes back to me, I'll repeat it. But
I will wait for it.
yeah, thanks.
If I see it flying around, I'll point it out to you.
Yeah, it was a good response. Dang it. Anyway, number 5 is that it's a smooth road once you get published.
Yeah, that too.
Equally not true. Like, did I? Like, scroll back 2 minutes and just watch what you just said.
It's true. And it really goes to, again, that everybody's journey is different. And, you know, I have clients who've been published coming on 30 books and consistently published for years and years. But to say that it's been smooth and there were never bumps or struggles or fears or restarts where you started querying publishers as if you'd never done it before is crazy. All of those things happen to almost all of them.
And I think one of the most important things to remember at this part of the process is that we have done all of our work, right? Like, it gets to a point when we're publishing a book and we're putting a book out there that it really depends on everything else, right? Like the readers, the market, when it was published, you know, what's happening in the world. Like, look at the pandemic. How many books maybe would have been super successful? We'll never know that.
Never know.
So once we get that book to the point where it's finished, it's ready to be in a reader's hand, it's like kind of a leap of faith. We're waiting on it to publish and see where it goes and what a reviewer says, and did Reese Witherspoon love it? Like, all of those things are out of our control.
Yeah.
And they will never be identical.
No, and I always say publishing is not a slow linear climb, you know. It doesn't go like this. It goes like this.
Yeah.
Sometimes you jump back, sometimes
it flat lines.
And I think that's where you really look at that it's not easy for anyone, but also that we talk a lot during the querying process about the persistence, and that the authors who have the most success were the ones that never quit. And that, to be honest, is all prep for this next step when it is not as smooth as you want it to be, and you still need to hold on to that persistence and not quit.
It never stops. I mean, like you said, roller coaster.
Roller
I mean, even when the book is out there, right? I mean, reader responses are a roller coaster. You will get tagged in like, I love this, is the best book I ever read. You will get tagged in, I hated this, it was the worst book I ever read. You will get tagged, and like, it's a roller coaster of response.
And it also, it doesn't always have to be bad. I mean, the roller coaster could be that you wrote a book 2 years ago that did fine and it was okay, and you're building a career and you're making, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000 advances, and you're still working your second job, but you're slugging away and you're doing okay. You're doing okay. And then for whatever reason, out of nowhere, your book like explodes, and you published it 2 years ago, but all of a sudden you've got hundreds of thousands in sales, and your career goes from this nice little steady to boom.
Cool example, TikTok.
Yes.
TikTok has made books into mega sellers, right? Books that may not have been mega sellers already. I know Madeline Miller's Madeline Miller's Song of Achilles was a big book when it published, and it continued like with great success. But it published a while ago now, many years ago. And it's back on the New York Times bestseller because TikTok blew it up out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
How many things might you like get a movie deal, and then that movie deal spikes? Like, you never know.
You never know. And I think sometimes we position these things as in the negative, and we also want to say that it's equally that the positive and the opposite can happen, that things can explode in a way that you never saw coming and make all your dreams come true.
And I think we're posing them all as negatives because our goal with the video is to help diffuse those constant negative thoughts and be positive.
Yeah.
So we're not trying to be negative.
No, we are not. It's against our brand.
It really is. It really is. Okay, so number 6 is, insert author's name here's first book sold for 6 figures and they never look back.
Yeah, that I think goes a little bit to, well, I guess everything else, but
Yeah.
again, there's this goes a little bit to a lot of what we talked, but that just because you got that 6-figure deal that you can now quit your day job means that you're always going to get 6-figure deals. And what I would say is an advance is not a salary. It's
No,
not.
we actually have a video, which, just to plug ourselves, there's a video that posted a couple weeks, maybe a month ago, called "Don't Quit Your Day Job." And I
Yeah.
think if you want more on this topic, to go back and read that, because we really broke down that book advances can be inconsistent. They do not pay you with the frequency and actual amount that you think you're going to get. So there's a lot that goes into that, and the decision of quitting your day job. That
Yeah.
I think it's worth watching, just to understand that a 6-figure deal is not a consistent 6-figure salary for the rest of your career.
No, and it doesn't mean you'll make it again, unfortunately. I compare it to the salary because, usually in a career, when you get to a certain salary threshold, when you go to look for other jobs or you get promoted, that whatever you're doing is consistent with that salary threshold you're at. But a book advance doesn't do that. Well, yes, publishers want to be able to pay you what they paid you last time. If your sales haven't shown that the value of your work is going to pay out that advance, then you may suddenly take a lesser of advance. And I've had a lot of authors offered or taken lesser advances because of sales. It also doesn't mean that it was necessarily a big backward step. Sometimes it allows the publisher to have more money and to sort of back up a bit and slowly build you back to that 6-figure
It
advance.
can be a pragmatic business decision.
Yeah. So.
And that's also just to say the same is true for the opposite, right? Like, just because you sell your first book for $5,000 doesn't mean every book you ever pour yourself into, you will only make $5,000 on. So just keep that in mind both ways.
Yep.
Number 7 is that your book will obviously become a huge,
Everybody's
huge box office success.
Yeah. Or sell in all the countries.
Oh, right. Well, you know what? Just to bring it, because I think this is really important. All the bookstores, when we publish a book,
this is a harsh reality.
This is a harsh reality. When we publish a book, we're like, every Barnes and Noble in the country is going to have my book on their shelves.
Yeah, of course.
It's not, it's the dream.
Yeah.
But think about how many books are published. Think about how many books are published a year, not considering, all the books that published 10 years ago that are still selling. It is literally physically impossible for every book to be on every store. And every store is going to cater to their market and the books that they're kind of buying and what they think can sell and the buzz and the buy-ins and all of that. But none of this is guaranteed. And we touched on this earlier. A lot of that's out of our hands. So even whether your book will become a movie, it's, dependent on another industry. Now, is this what's trending in film and TV? Is this something that another agent can get on board, but I can sell this, and then get a producer and a writer and actors and all of that on board?
Yeah. It's a different market.
Yeah. So we can't, it's never a given. And also, another harsh reality, every author thinks their book can be a movie.
Yeah.
But the fact is, not every book can be a movie. Some books don't have just the long sustained hook for a movie, the depth of plot, think about when you're watching a movie. You ever watch a movie like that was dreadfully boring?
Right.
Some books will just naturally produce that kind of movie because that's their story. But they work really well in books, but maybe it's not quite right for a movie or film.
Well, a lot of times when we really find ourselves super engaged in a book, the writing plays a big part of that. That writing
absolutely
does not necessarily translate to the screen.
Can I also say the format?
Yes, you can.
When, where, and how you read the book, that all plays into it. It's just a different experience than if we are doing, same thing with an audiobook. A narrator changes an audiobook, right?
Yeah.
The format that you are experiencing a story changes that story.
Yeah, and exactly. And I also want to touch on how translation or foreign rights work too, where it also is a market situation. You know, what we read in the United States is not necessarily interchangeable with what people in Japan or Brazil or Germany read. That different cultures have different likes and dislikes. So the assumption that just because it's successful here, it will be successful around the world is completely wrong. Also, sometimes a book can be more successful in another country than it is here. So again,
that's always super cool though.
I actually think that's one of the coolest things,
Yeah.
which is terrible. I mean, I would love it to be super successful in both places, but it is kind of funny when you represent a book and sell it in the US and it actually becomes more successful in another country, which was not the country of the native language of the book.
Right. Number 8, and this one we also sort of touched upon, but I think a lot of this list sort of blends in with each other, is that you will or will not be able to quit your day job.
And I think both sides of this are important, will and will not.
Yeah.
Because the big preach in publishing is you'll never quit your day job. But why can't we assume that maybe you will get to quit your day job?
Right. It's funny.
Know.
It's the conventional wisdom says you'll never be able to, but like the dream goal is always that you will be able to.
Yeah, and I think if you want to, or I mean, some people don't want to quit their day job.
Yeah.
But also I think that if it's something you really want to, and your goal is to quit your day job, then you need to look at writing as a whole, as a profession, and not just, I want to be a novelist and quit my day job off my novels. Maybe you're also picking up other writing opportunities or writing things like IP projects. Maybe you're not always writing the books of your own creation. Maybe you're finding other opportunities that will help grow your name.
Freelance, all of that.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of ways to do this either way, but I do think authors like to tell themselves one or the other about that.
Yeah, which I understand. I understand. It's ambition, but sometimes it's not feasible or necessary. So
I hear you.
number 9, and this is such an important one.
Yeah.
The grass is always greener at another literary agency with another agent, or at another publisher, or with another editor.
Yeah, I think that I mean, we all do it, right? When we're frustrated, when we're unhappy, when we're dissatisfied, the neighbor's grass always looks better. The restaurant that we didn't go to is always better. Somebody has a better job. Somebody has better kids. Somebody has a better this or that. And oh, let's be honest.
Okay.
I think it happens a lot in publishing, that there's assumptions that somebody else loves their publisher, it's so much better. What I always say to authors is, give me a publisher and I will give you an equal number of stories of love and stories of hate about every single one.
So I mean, this one I think kind of also ties into our last one. So does it make sense to just sort of loop them in together?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I think what this really comes from is publishing as an industry is very community based, right? Like we have our critique groups, we have our agents have their, groups as well. And we are judging our experiences off somebody else's experience. And sometimes that's preconceived, like we go in with this idea of so-and-so at Macmillan is getting a 6-figure marketing budget and I'm not, or no, this is how this publisher does it and they're not doing that for me, or hang on, you also edit my other client and you didn't do this for them. And I think I always say eyes on your own paper, and that's because all of that stuff distracts us from the best thing we can do for this book. And not every book is going to get the same treatment. Not every author is going to like an editor, is going to like a publisher, is going to like their cover, all of this stuff, right? And I think the best way we can combat that is by eyes on our own paper, focusing on our journey, making the book the best we can be, and solving the problems that we have in our own journey. And then I feel like all the other stuff kind of falls away a little bit.
Yeah.
Unless there's an actual concern. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I especially liked what you said at the end about unless there's an actual concern. The grass is always greener is a different attitude than I truly am struggling with this editor, this publisher, this agent. But if you're struggling because it looks like everybody else is getting stuff or doing stuff that you're not getting, then are you really struggling, or are you sort of in a panic
It's a
about,
mental roadblock.
right? But if you're truly unhappy with something, then maybe the grass somewhere else is better for you. But don't look at it as it's going to be better automatically just because I can tell it looks better. Like, don't discount what your publisher, your editor, your agent is giving you simply because it seems like somebody else is getting something better.
Right. And I think the way I always try and combat this is I'm very like, I drive in, I'm like, why? Why do you want that? What do you need from that? What are you missing? What did this person have that you feel you're not getting? How can we fix that? And I think once you like dial in with those really specific questions, you're like, oh, well, maybe not. And I think if it goes away when you do that, then it's not an actual concern. It's a comparison game that we're playing.
Well, and yeah, exactly. And so much, again, it's perception. Oh, well, so-and-so got picked up by Reese's book club. Well, that doesn't mean their publisher is better. Your publisher maybe pitched you to Reese's book club too. It's just that yours didn't get picked up. That doesn't mean it wasn't pitched, or my publisher doesn't do any marketing for me. This author is getting this and this and this. Well, what was their advance? What are they paying for themselves? There's so many variables that I bet you don't know.
But it goes back to saying it's impossible to know.
It's impossible to know.
Even when you are best friends with another author and they're relaying every single bit of that detail, it's coming through their lens.
Yes.
It's still biased information.
Yeah.
So my publisher put together this for me and oh my God, it's so great, right? But
yeah.
Is that even what you want? Is that great for you? If this publisher did that, is that really where you want to focus? You are always going to buy into what somebody else is saying if you think it's better than what you're getting.
Yeah, and the truth is not everybody's for everybody. Yeah. So, somebody's life might look really great and their editors might seem really great, but when you sit down and talk to that editor, the two of you might not get along at all.
Or my favorite, that editor does not even do what you do.
Right.
Oh, that one is my favorite. I really have to say that one's my favorite. And I'm like, thank you for this editor suggestion, but really, they're not a fit for you.
Or I understand where that author looks like they're getting a lot, but they write something in a completely different market, and maybe even a completely different format.
Yeah, what's standard for a picture book marketing is not standard for an adult rom-com. It's just different. It's different beasts.
And you could say the same about a hardcover versus a paperback, or you could really look at a million different ways at that.
Yeah, I agree. So, I think what we're saying, and I really do think it all comes back to, accept outside experiences, but really it's eyes on your own paper and making sure your experience is fair to you, is doing the best it can by you and making the best of it. Because I think that it's very easy to fall into the comparison game. I do it all the time and I try not to.
We all do.
Yeah, but I think that it can really, also a lot of this is just fun and exciting. And it's the saddest thing to see another author go through this experience and just not enjoy it at all. Because when you get to that 2-3 months in advance of publication, that's when you're going to be freaked out. So enjoy it right now.
It is so hard. And maybe this is where we sort of come to this from, but I think the hardest part about our job, one of them, is when we see an author who is at the stage where they're achieving so many of their dreams. Their book is coming out and they have this agent and they have this amazing editor and they can't see the good. They keep looking at what's wrong, or they keep telling themselves this story about how everybody else has it better, or it's all going to end tomorrow. And I'm an optimist and everybody knows that. So it's really hard for me when they're just not taking any time to really enjoy the ride, because it's a ride.
That it is. It is definitely a ride. And I think, I don't know, I feel like this is a good place to leave it because it's a positive place, but enjoy the ride and always advocate for yourself and speak to your agent if something is not quite right. But trust your journey and your process and just enjoy it, because
Yeah.
it's an exciting thing, and you are most likely living out the dream that you've wanted to live out for a while anyway. So
Yeah. No,
um,
I think that's great.
yeah, well, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here next week, same time, same place.
Bye.